Hi everyone, today I have Shri with us. I'm super excited to share with you more about his business and who this gentleman is. So with that said, Shri, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Tony. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Let's dive right into it. If you could share with the audience a one word open to kick things off, what would that be?
I would say the word that I always gravitate towards is relentless. Um, and I can explain that in more detail later, but it's basically being relentless is the key for me.
That's an awesome word to start things off with. Cool. Let's talk about business. If you could take 3 to 5 minutes, first off, give us a little bit about your background, and then talk to us about how you got your, business started since inception and until where you are today and where you're going. That way, the audience could have a really good understanding of what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, I'm an engineer by training, and then I went to business school. Primarily focused on international business and finance. Um, and my background has been in consulting, management consulting, to be more specific. I did a lot of that with EY, Capgemini for 9 years, and then did a startup in consulting. Did that for 9 years. And then the reason I think Engagely got started is because all these years of almost 18 years of consulting led me to discover one thing, which is that employees in general were not very happy and engaged at a broad level in a lot of these larger organizations that I was working with, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a startup myself, because I was like, I really want to do something that's more personal, where I feel connected, where I'm more engaged, where I'm motivated. And Engagely actually happens to be that startup, which not only is a startup which engages me, but also a startup that will help engage and drive better connections and communities within organizations. So our goal at Engagely really is to provide employees with a meaningful workplace where they can find fulfillment at work, but ultimately also have organizations get the benefit of that by having better outcomes without having to burn their people out, and having disconnected approaches between their people and their business strategy.
Excellent. I read something on the Wall Street Journal a while back, and it said, when you said the word burnout, it totally reminded me of this article I read. It says something like the average national average on most SaaS companies, it costs 120 grand for every employee you have to replace because of the acquiring the talent, training, package and benefits and replacement and lost revenue for having someone train. So that's cool that and I'm excited to hear more about exactly how you help. When you said creating things that are meaningful, stuff like that for people working and avoiding burnout. So let's go right into wins. If you could share with us a recent win that you had in your company and your takeaway from it, that would be great.
Yeah, one of the big wins we had in the recent year, the last, I guess, 9 months ago, was we got a big Fortune 1000 company as one of our clients, which is kind of unusual for organization our size or platform our size, because we are in a pretty competitive space in HR tech. We are competing with large platform companies, like the Workdays and SAPs of the world, and to have a client have trust in a platform like ours was a huge win for us. And the reason I think was a big win, and we have other bigger clients too, but this one was especially important because it was a person who I had worked with previously in a smaller startup that they had, and that person got elevated to running a bigger organization, and she suggested that Engagely be part of that ecosystem that they're building to help build their organizations to be more connected, more engaged, and more focused. So that was a huge win, because it validates our thesis that you need to be customer focused, you need to listen to market, and you need to build those relationships at the personal level and not just at a you know business entity level alone. So that, I think, was a huge win for us and validates our approach to our client success.
Awesome. Let's talk about the other side of that. So if you could share with us what failure means to you and a recent failure and your takeaway and what you walked away with when you had to experience this failure in your business.
You know, I would say there are many failures, right, that you can have, and the key is to not let that affect you adversely, where you become when you become, you're not taking any action or taking erratic action. You got to learn from the failure to see what worked, what didn't work. I think one of the big ones that we have seen in the last year is that sometimes in our zeal to win deals and get clients, we'll sometimes get the wrong client. The clients who are not necessarily aligned with our approach or with our philosophy of how do you engage people and how do you really drive better business results by making your entire strategy and your approach transparent to people. I think we believe in transparency as one of the key drivers for engagement. So organizations that are very much hierarchical, where you really don't know what's going on 2 levels above you, and consequently it affects the management too, where they don't know what's going on 2 levels below them, and that really constricts the ability for organizations to be optimized for success, and not have the level of trust that you need to be successful at all levels. So we have some clients, who are who really like the concept of Engagely, but culturally they're just not a good fit. And we have lost those clients due to one reason or the other in the past. And I think we the key takeaway is that we make sure that when we are having these initial discussions, that they're aligned to the same level of transparency or purpose, or to some extent in that continuum, so that they can really benefit from the platform like ours and not try to change the platform to fit that culture that we believe is not going to be conducive in the long run to be successful.
Understood. If you could go back in time and you had 30 seconds and you're sitting in front of your 21-year-old self and you had 30 seconds to give yourself one advice or just some life advice, business advice, whatever you think it's important, what would you say?
Um, I always tell myself, and I still say that to myself even today, is patience. Have a little bit of patience, but that doesn't mean you get complacent. You just need to do the work and be patient. Sometimes things don't move as fast as you want them to move, or things don't always move at the speed at which you move personally. And impatience can lead to mistakes. It can lead to you making bad decisions or wrong decisions because you want to move away from the path you're on to a different path because you just did not stay there long enough. And and it's like trying to find water, and you dig 20 feet here, 20 feet there, 20 feet there, and you're not going to find any water anywhere. And the key is to stay in one place and dig that 100 200 feet that you need to dig to find water. And sometimes, you also need to know when to quit. If you know that after this X amount of digging you've done, there's just not enough water because maybe you were digging in the wrong place in the first place. You need to know when to quit. Quitting is not always a bad thing as well. So I would say those are the two key takeaways: is to be patient, but also knowing when to quit. It's this delicate balance, and that sometimes comes only with, as you get older and you're wiser, to know when do you keep digging and when do you quit.
Awesome. What's that one question you wish that I would have asked you, or when you're doing interviews or you're talking to new hires and you give them that opportunity to ask you a new, that new hire, hey, what's any questions for me, or just in any talks that you're doing? What's that one question you love, or what's that one question you wish I would have asked you today that I didn't? If you could share that with us and answer, that would be great.
Okay. So the question that I ask, and I ask myself that too, what motivates me on a daily basis? What makes me get out of bed in the morning and say, I'm going to crush the day today? I'm going to try to do the best I can today. Um, I think that's the one question that I think everybody should ask themselves. And when they look in the mirror, it's like, what motivates you? So, to answer the question for me, in terms of what motivates me really is I feel like in a way I'm competing with myself, and I've said that to many people. You don't really compete with other people because everybody's on a different journey. They're running a different race. You're not necessarily competing even with your competitors. You're really competing with your own vision and trying to make sure that you can get and realize that vision to the best possible extent you can. You'll never get 100% of what you aspirationally want, and some people do, and they're the lucky ones, or they didn't aim high enough, one of the two. You know, in my case, I would say realizing my vision of building a world-class platform, a world-class organization, a world-class solution that can help people find meaning at work, help organizations build better cultures, better transparency, optimize their talent pool. I think, as long as that vision is out there and it remains unfulfilled, I'll keep waking up every morning and getting to work to do that.
Understood. So speaking of patience that you mentioned earlier, I've been patiently waiting to hear about Relentless. So talk to me about that. What were you going to share with us about
Oh, that's the same thing, right?
Relentless?
It's being relentless. It needs, and that's actually, the closing word that, which I know you'll ask in a minute. It actually relates to that.
Okay,
You cannot win uh, a war, if you will, use an analogy there, by fighting quick fights. You have to be relentless. Some days will be good, some days will be bad, but in the overall run, the long run, the key to success is actually being relentless. It's
I
not
see.
your skill, it's not necessarily your talent, and sometimes it's not just hard work. It's relentlessly working towards it, learning from your mistake, deliberate practices. People talk about, 10,000 hours. It's not just doing the work of 10,000 hours. It's actually deliberately doing that, in the sense that you're looking back, you're retrospecting on what could I've done better, and then try to avoid those mistakes and course correct along the way, but doing it relentlessly day in, day out.
So true. I mean, there's three words that come to mind, so relentlessness, relentless, persistence, and hustle. These three are definitely correlated. When you look at it, when you write it, when you type it out, when you hear it, they have many different meanings at many different times, right? So I know hustle is a bad word now, so to some people say, but ultimately, like you said, you have to, you know, be relentless. You have to have persistence. You have to, have that motivation. You have to have that the drive. You have to have the why. So that's really great. I wanted to find out from you. You said something really interesting earlier about two levels up, two levels down. There's a disconnect in the organization. As a thought leader, what do you think is the biggest? What attributes to that? Why is there such a disconnect two levels up and down in an organization? What do you typically see? What's the cause of that?
Fear. It's fear. I think there's a fear among management that if they expose what their strategy is or the goals are, and either the people may not understand, or it might scare them, or they might start asking questions that maybe you don't have good answers for. And second, when you have these goals and aspirations as an organization leader, when you're exposing those to your people below you, you're also putting yourself out for criticism, right? Because if you don't hit those goals, and nine out of, you might not hit every single goal, right? And at that point, are you afraid of looking like a fool, or looking like you're a failure? And I think the key here is to have the transparency, saying it's okay to fail, because we aimed big and we will not always accomplish everything we aim for, but we are not going to stop trying. And I need your help to help us as an organization be successful. And I think that level of thinking, where there's trust, and transparency requires, a trust requires transparency. I think that is, it's to some extent fear from the management, where they feel like they can't tell everything to everybody, because it might, you know cause issues or discontentment, or questioning the leadership. Then you have to question whether you are a good leader or not in the first place, if you can't trust your own people.
Can you define in your own words what thought leadership is? What does it mean to you when you see the word, when you say the word? What is thought leadership to you?
Well, thought leadership to me is looking at a situation and really understanding how the situation first happened, or occurred in the first place, and then what can a leader, or a team, or a person do to make it better or change it. And that requires a level of analysis to understand what led them to the first place, and then also an understanding of what are the different possible actions or remedies, if you will, that can help. But it's grounded on reality and data to some extent, where you've seen companies who've done better, because they did this A, B, and C. They will not always say that A, B, and C, but you have to infer that from what those organizations did, or infer that from what those leaders did who were successful, and then infer what they didn't do, in the cases where they are not successful. So I think thought leadership is distilling that down into some sort of um, a parable, if you will, where you can take away some key points and say, if I do these things, I have a higher odds of being successful in whatever role or project or initiative that you're working on. So thought leadership is to be able to provide that level of insight and analysis by looking at the reality of on the ground.
Outstanding. That was huge. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. If our listeners wanted to find out more information about your company, please give out your website address and how could they get in connection with you if they want to follow up with you to find out more.
Yeah, so our company is Engagedly, Engagedly. It's Engaged Ly, and you can find us on LinkedIn, obviously, and that's probably the best way to find us. You can also find me on Engagedly on LinkedIn.com/Srikant Chellappa, I believe is my LinkedIn handle. Um, and yeah, it's probably the best way to. And if you Google my name, you'll find it. I'm out there on Google.
Awesome. Awesome. And I know you help a lot of different companies, but if you could take 30 seconds, share with our audience who's your typical sweet spot that you make the biggest difference to. I know you make an impact to a lot of organizations. I mean, whether it's general or you have a specific area that you're really good at, if you could share that with the audience as they're listening, that would be great at this moment.
Yeah. So organizations that really look at people and people processes as one and same or part of the overall organizational strategy, I think that's where we are successful. And typically, product like Engagely or our product works really well for companies around the mid-market segment. Companies that are about 100 employees all the way up to 5,000 employees or so, where they really have a leadership that believes that the best way to perform better as an organization is to harness the motivations, the energy, the alignment of their people to their business strategy. And a product like us can really do wonders for those organizations where they want to provide a level of transparency, alignment, and processes and all the tools that people need to be successful in their roles.
Outstanding. If you could sign us off with a one word close, that would be great at this moment.
Marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? And that comes back to my being relentless. It's the same thing. You're not trying to run a sprint and finish the race. It's relentlessly going one step at a time and taking one step over the next. And it's a long race. So conserve your energy, plan your energy, and know that it's not going to end tomorrow. It's going to be a long haul.
Awesome. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. Looking forward to catching up with you soon. Hopefully we could, find out what you're up to soon when we on your next interview with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Tony. It's been a pleasure.